Hey everyone, welcome to Talks of Thailand. My name is Jon. Today's story is about a man who made a number of schoolboy errors when he retired in Thailand, and it cost him an awful lot of money. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, give the video a like, and let's get into today's story.
It all started with a game of Connect 4, a game I'd always prided myself on being very good at. Yet with her, she seemed to be able to effortlessly beat me every single time, and I wasn't able to understand why. I guess if you've worked in a bar for years and Connect 4 is one of the only games that you're able to play, you learn how to play it very well. And I saw her ability to play that game as well as she did as a sign that she was a bit more special than all the other bar girls that I'd ever spent any time with. That's what I was interested in at the end of the day. I wanted a bar girl, and I also wanted her to be intelligent. I wanted her to have her own mind, because I wanted to build a life in Thailand, and I wanted to build a life with someone who I thought was clever. To me, that's where it all began, and I suppose where it all started to go wrong, even though things took place across a very long period of time, and I had no inclination of what was to come. I know that there are going to be people who say, never marry a bar girl. That's what everyone would say. But you have to also point to all the reasons why you would marry someone who wasn't a bar girl. I could point to more reasons, at least at the time that is. I'm not talking about any more, but I could point to more reasons why you shouldn't marry someone who wasn't a bar girl over someone who was, and let me point those out to you right now. Firstly, of course, if you're marrying someone in your own country, who goes to work just like you, who comes from a similar background as you, while perhaps on the same intellectual playing field, it's more of a relationship that is too modern for people like me. I wasn't after a modern relationship where we both work, we both save, we both pay for things, and we both basically act like the man in the relationship. I didn't want a man for a wife. I didn't want that at all. I'm not saying that I wanted or expected an actual man here. I'm meaning an actual woman who believed that she was a man. I wanted a woman for a wife, and I believed the best place to find a woman was in Thailand. Perhaps the bars might not be the best solution for that, but at the time I always thought they were. And the reason I thought they were was because, again, it shifted the power dynamic of the relationship to a point where she could be feminine, affectionate, loving, caring, and with the ability to look after everyone in the household, and I would be the one who was paying for and taking care of the relationship. That's how I saw relationships. The woman was the glue that stuck the family together. The man was the enabler of the relationship in terms of the finances, and that's just how I thought and how I hoped my life would go from there. With her it did start, as I've already said, with a simple game of Connect 4 in a bar along Soi 8, approximately 15 years ago. By the way, I mean Sukhumvit Soi 8 in Bangkok, not Pattaya Soi 8. That's quite important, because again, I thought that bar girls who worked in different cities around the country were fundamentally different people. Those going to Pattaya were more money hungry, greedy, and prepared to accept less. And by less, I actually mean they were prepared to accept more humiliation and to not be as picky or choosy. That's what I'm trying to say. Whereas I thought in Bangkok, bar girls were more choosy over who they spent time with, because that was just how I thought things were 15 years ago. So this would have been around 2011. I'd been to Thailand the year before, in 2010, with my eldest son, who had just turned 18, and as I was divorced from his mother, I'd always promised him the trip of a lifetime when he turned 18, as he chose to go to Thailand as well as Taiwan and Japan. Yes, he wanted to go to 3 places, and because they were all in Asia, and we might as well go to all of them, so a week in each place. There's no point talking much about Japan or Taiwan, but they were both incredible countries. We had incredible times in both, and built memories that last to this day. But in Thailand, especially in Bangkok, which was the only city we were staying in when we went, I think both of us really felt captivated by just how amazing it was. It wasn't one of those holidays where we did absolutely everything together. We might go out for a meal, catch up for lunch the following day, but we went our own ways, looking at our own things, and I believe my son was a lot more interested in the cultural heritage side of things, spending a lot of time around Yarawat or Chinatown. He seemed to really revel in the history and the cultural side of things, and while I wasn't expecting the bars to be a place I would find that I would lose myself, I did find myself, I think on the second night there, going for a walk up Soy Cowboy. To me, that was the real cultural side of things, at least the side I was interested in, and I wandered into a bar, and you could say that doing so changed my life. Nothing whatsoever serious happened between any of the girls that I met during that week in Thailand, and my son and I had a fantastic time together when we went and did things together, and we kind of made it our own little send-off, sending him off into the world. He was going to be going to university, got into a great one, going to be studying something good, and I'm very proud of where he is today and what he's managed to achieve. My son will actually play quite an important role in my story later on, so perhaps giving him that send-off and always making sure that I financed his life in the best way I possibly could when he was younger actually gave me something to cling on to in a way, to say, well, if I hadn't done this, where would I be now? Always take care of your kids. Always put them first, second, third and fourth, and if you've done it right, if you ever fall on hard times, you can rest assured that your kids will come and step in to help if they're financially able to. It was a great time in 2010. I was 55 years old, and I felt like I was really old at that time. Imagine how I feel now, years later. I'd worked as a property developer for most of my life, and I should also point out that when my son was 18, I gave him one of the houses that I'd recently renovated, which took a big hit to my savings overall, but I think after I got back from Thailand, and based on the fact that I'd spoken to a few expats who were there, based on the fact that I'd spent time looking around at what was available in terms of retirement there, I think I had pretty much decided that Thailand was going to be the place I would retire and see out the latter years of my life. What I was going to be going with was 3 rental properties in my local area, worth around 150 grand each, as well as around 50 grand cash. So I had £500,000 all in, which, well, as I actually say that out loud and think about it, is quite alarming, because £500,000 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money in Thailand, and it was even more money back then in Thailand, approximately 15 years ago. But again, things happen, and we tend to live through the things that happen without necessarily understanding what we're doing or what we're getting into until we're already in so deep that doing anything about it becomes a lot more difficult than it otherwise would have been. I sold my 3 investment properties before moving to Thailand and invested the money into more liquid investments, and in 2011 I was back again. I had a retirement visa stamped in my passport, got my bank account set up, deposited the 800,000 baht needed so I could get an extension, and it was painless, it was all effortless, and it was my plan to take in a bit more of the country, because up until then I'd only really spent time in Bangkok. I really loved it, and I suppose I still do, which is even more painful because I'm no longer there. I'd heard, after I'd spoken to guys, just a couple of guys, talking about on my first trip, that when people go to live in Thailand, there are so many different places all over the country that you can choose. You've got people living up in the north, people in the south, people in Pattaya, people in Isan, people everywhere. And I suppose at the time, I just wasn't aware of how varied the country of Thailand was. I wasn't aware of just how much of everything they had, all in one country. It was kind of like you didn't need to go anywhere else once you were in Thailand, because you had the big city, you had the beautiful beaches, you had the mountains, and you had everything in between. And when Thailand is sold to you in that way, it really makes you think perhaps that's why so many people go to Thailand, because of the variation of everything that goes on around the country. For example, if you went to, I don't know, Tenerife, which happened to be one of my favourite places to go, or if you went to Italy, granted, you've got variety throughout those places, but you don't have the extreme variety that you have in Thailand. It is on a whole different level. It's amazing. What I'm trying to say, it was just a lot more varied than anywhere else I'd ever been, and that's saying something. As I was spending my time, probably the first couple of months that I was in Thailand, as I was spending that in a few places around the country, again, I was checking out the bar scene in each of the places, and as I mentioned earlier, Pattaya, for me, was just the worst of the worst. It was the pits, it was awful, because although I spent probably 2 weeks there altogether, and I did go to Soi 6, Soi 7, Soi Bukaw, and all the places that were very famous for the bars, as I said, I found that the bars there were too in your face. They were too like a production line, too commercialized, too kind of jarring in a way. And you would go into a bar and you would see this beautiful girl just speaking to anyone, absolutely anyone. And I suppose they were speaking to me as well, but I kind of understood why they spoke to someone like me. I wasn't fat, I wasn't ugly, I was from England, I was your sort of typical Thailand expat. But then you walk into a bar, and especially in Pattaya, and you'd see guys from all over the place, and wonder to yourself, I thought bar girls were meant to be at least a little bit picky and choosy, and in Pattaya, it just wasn't the case at all, and that's what put me off immediately. I did like the affordability of it round there. I did like the fact that you could get pretty much anything you wanted to buy around there. That was great, and close access to the beach. Although it wasn't a beach that I would want to spend any time swimming in, given the fact that it was not like the idyllic ones further to the south. So Pattaya was a place that I wrote off almost straight away as being a little bit too blue-collar for my liking, a little bit too down in the dumps, and I never visited after that. I did the typical, I suppose, new Thailand expat location jump from place to place. Phuket, really beautiful island. I mean, it was breathtaking, especially the time of year that I was there. It just seemed to be the perfect time to go. But again, it just didn't feel like you were in Thailand in the same way. It seemed to be so tourist-heavy. As did Pattaya, as did Koh Samui, when I went there, and Hua Hin too. All these places just seemed to be too tourist-heavy. While you could say that the same was true in Bangkok, because it was the capital city, there were many local people there as well though, getting by on their daily lives. You could be in part of Bangkok and not see a foreigner, but then you could be in Sukhumvit and you would see foreigners, but there were so many local people there as well. I think it was the feeling that you were living in a big city amongst locals, not predominantly tourists. And I think that's very important for me. Pattaya, Phuket, Hua Hin and all those kinds of places, it felt like you'd be living amongst expats and amongst foreigners, and that just didn't feel like what I was particularly interested in. I wanted to live local, but have everything on my front door. I wanted to be able to make expat friends, but also local friends, and that's why I ultimately decided that Bangkok was going to be the place that I would base myself, and from there, just enjoy myself travelling around the country. What people say about Thailand is true. You really didn't need to go anywhere else once you've been in Thailand, because you had everything there. Although I did plan to explore more of the region, going to Cambodia. I wanted to go to Laos, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, Myanmar, Hong Kong, and China, and everywhere. And when you've got £500,000 invested, bringing in at the time what was an even better income than today based on the exchange rate, and when you find a decent place to rent, only a small one-bedroom in Air Khmer, which was only 12,000 baht a month, and after paying for your insurance, your utilities, and all the other essentials, visa money, etc., you're left with, or at least I was in terms of what I had coming in on a monthly basis, around 80 to 90,000 baht to spend purely on anything I wanted. After all the essentials were out of the way, out of everything that I needed to spend, after all of that, 80 to 90,000 baht a month, and that felt like a fortune. That was for food and entertainment. Once I got settled into my apartment and I was spending time in the bars and enjoying the company of the girls everywhere I went, but it wasn't in excess. I'm not going wild here, I'm not going daily, perhaps once or twice a week at the most. It wasn't my be-all and end-all, but it was just one of the many things I loved about Thailand. I wasn't one of those guys who put the bars as the only reason they were in Thailand. It was one of a multitude of reasons, so many amazing reasons why I was there, so I think that's very important. I lived pretty much like this for 6 months or so, probably a bit longer, just getting to know Thailand and settling in to this amazing new way of life. My son came for a visit when he had a break from university, and it was just like old times with him. And it was not long after that when I was just down Soi 8. But the bar that I went into is long gone since I went in the first time. It was one of those old school style places. No air conditioning inside, open fronted, couple of girls, pool table, and that was about it. Oh, and cheap beer, of course. I just wandered in, ordered a beer. She comes over, I get a drink for her, and we're talking, probably talking for quite a while before the Connect 4 comes out. And as I said, I loved playing this, and very, very rarely had any bar girl ever beaten me at this game before. Very rarely. I love chess as well. I love mind games. I love everything like that. It's something I still love to this day. But she pulled out the Connect 4, told me I could go first, and I thought, now you've got no chance. Then all of a sudden, I found out she's beaten me, so we played again. She goes first, I lose again and again and again, I keep losing. And by the time I won my first game, I think she was just feeling sorry for me and she let me win. I think it was that feeling that I'd found someone who was on the same wavelength as me mentally that really attracted me to her. Because although, like I said, I spent time with girls in the bars before, it wasn't often that I took a girl out of a bar. I suppose I should have mentioned that before. Go to the bars once or twice a week, and it was maybe once or twice a month where I might take a girl with me, and she was definitely going to be one of the girls I would take with me, because it was just like we were both able to enjoy playing this game, and that was the only game they had in there. Well, that's a lie. They had Jenga as well, but that's less of a mind game and more of a keep your hand steady kind of game, and I probably won half the games we played of that, and she won half, as you'd expect, on a game inclined more to chance. But we left the bar, and at this point it was still relatively early in the evening, and I wasn't ready to go back to my room straight away, so we went for something to eat, and that was the first time I found out about this really cheap Thai place around there that I wasn't aware of before. She took me there, and then you see all the local people who work around there eating at this cheap place, and while there were a few foreigners there, it wasn't like the sort of place that was set up for foreigners, and it's really like one of those things I believe that made me, at that moment in time, convinced me that Bangkok was going to be the place I would live forever. It was finding out little things like that that made it 100% as opposed to 99%. It's like there are two Bangkoks right next to each other, right in the middle of the city. You've got two Bangkoks. One that only tourists and foreigners and locals will see, but another that only locals are aware of. And once you get to know this side of Bangkok, once you get to know all the little areas that you get to go to, that's when I believed that I was an insider. I suppose you could say when I believed I was really in it with Thailand in a way that I hadn't been up until that moment. We had some great Thai food, very cheap, love Thai food, and to this day I still miss just how amazing Thai food was. And we went back to my place, and I was starting to develop feelings for her, as crazy as you might think that might be. But this wasn't the first bar girl I met, by the way. It wasn't. Well, into my time in Thailand. When she left the following morning, I got her contact details, and let's see about meeting up again. I actually called her the same day, only a couple of hours later, telling her I wanted to see her again. But I said I didn't really want to go back to Nana, I don't want to go back to the bars, so come to my place, and she did. From there, we spent more and more time together, across the following weeks, and then it's like we're inseparable. And I must admit to spending an insane amount of money at that time, just trying to woo her, I would say, because when you found out that she'd been working in the bar for 5 or 6 years, the amount of guys that had come and gone who probably had good money and had allowed her to witness things that in an ideal world any man wouldn't want their girl to witness until he was the first to give her that experience. So I tried to make it clear that, while perhaps you've seen guys splashing money around before, I'm in a different league kind of thing, even though I really wasn't. Although £500,000 felt like a lot of money, by the time we'd been together for around 6 months, that £500,000, even though I was getting income coming in from the new investments I made with it, had gone down to about 450 grand. There's going to be some people that are going to listen to that and think that's not possible. How do you spend 50 grand in around 6 months in Thailand? Extremely easily. Let me promise you that. When you're going to beautiful beach resorts, when you're eating at the nicest restaurants and drinking wine, money can go very quickly in Thailand, even back then, and it was going very quickly when I was with her. Although at this point, I felt like I loved her, and we were both going to be together, she was 43, I think that's important to say, she wasn't in her 20s, I wasn't that stupid, well, I suppose I was, but I wasn't as stupid as I would have been if I'd gone for someone 20 years younger than her. Then it was a question of how am I going to make sure that I can keep her in this position that she'd sort of grown accustomed to by being with me. And I knew that I could probably settle down a bit, but I felt if I was going to settle down, it might ruin what we had, and it might change her, and I was terrified of her changing. I actually decided that I wanted to see if she would get married to me, and when she agreed, I thought that was the next step to kind of putting together what we had in a much more firm way. I don't really want to bore you about how the wedding went because I've heard that in so many stories before, and while I find it quite interesting to listen to other guys' experiences, they all kind of blend in together, I find, so I'm not going to tell you about the whole wedding, but I will agree to tell you exactly what happened because it's only right to say that I was one of those complete morons. I mean, calling me a moron would be putting it very, very lightly. Probably call me complete, well, I don't want to swear. But yes, I paid sinsod. I was one of those guys that paid sinsod for a bar girl. A 43-year-old bar girl who had 2 kids and who had been working in the bar for at least 6 years, because I was convinced it was part of Thai culture. I was convinced that that's just what you had to do, so I did it. Crazy, because I should tell you how much it was. 1 million baht. I gave 1 million baht to her family, and they took it with a smile on their face as well, as if to say, this is perfectly normal. But I bet they were probably thinking to themselves at the time, what a stupid farang, and I was, but they had 1 million baht out of me. At the time, I thought it was okay. Plus the money I spent on the actual wedding, plus the honeymoon, plus everything, again, I'd spent another 50 grand. But now I think it was time that we both wanted to settle down and just live a peaceful life. I haven't really spoken much about her, apart from to say that she seemed to be quite clever. She was 43, she had 2 kids, she was from Isan, and she just was, I found, really elegant. She wore clothes like she was not from that world. She wore dresses that really were like they weren't from that world. I mean, you'd see bar girls with these scantily clad clothes on trying to be as provocative as possible, but she wasn't like that. Even when I met her, she wasn't like that. She was just kind of like an elegant lady looking for a guy like me, and that's how I really perceived her. It was really amazing, because it just felt like we were meant to be together, and the age difference was nothing even to talk about. She's only going to, in theory, reduce in beauty quite quickly as the time goes by. At least that's the way I saw it, and I took that as a positive, that she would be perfect and never change. By this point, I probably had about 400 grand left. That meant my income was quite considerably reduced, but we decided that we wanted to move to a different condo, and I had no intention of buying a condo, but we were looking at rentals, and there were so many options available, so many options of affordable rental condos, especially at that time, and you have to remember, I believe that after COVID, or at least what I'm told from people, that prices in Bangkok have gone through the roof and don't really pay any resemblance to the fact that you're in Thailand. I believe many people say that, but back then it really was cheap. I can't personally comment about how it is today, but we saw so many condos that felt like we were spoiled for choice. We were in one building. Again, I'm not going to say where it was. I would agree to say that it was between Nana and Air Kamai, and we were looking at this rental unit. It was 2 bedrooms, because at this point I felt like I wanted a bit more space. People can very well and good say you can find cheap condos in Bangkok, but try to live in a shoebox for extended periods of time. It really does jade a bit, so I wanted some space. I wanted to be able to use a second bedroom for a kind of office. I wanted to find something to do to keep myself occupied. As I said, I'd always been in property development, and I was starting to get really fascinated about the condo market. And while we looked at this unit, thought it was great, and the agent left, downstairs they had signboards, and there was one for sale, and it was my wife who said, "Can we have a look at that?" I said, "Give them a call, let's see." So she calls them, and I'm thinking, well, we'll come back in a few days' time, but they said they can be there in 30 minutes to show us the unit. So we go outside, have a coffee at the place opposite the road, and she gets a call to say that the owners have arrived. We go and meet them. They seem like really friendly people, Thai, by the way, and they take us up to this room. Although at the time I had no intention of actually buying it, when we looked at it, there was something about it, the way it was laid out, something about the setup of the place, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, that just kind of screamed at me, "You've just arrived home." Perhaps it was also how excitable my wife seemed to be about the fact that this place seemed to be so perfect. It was big as well, in an older building, obviously, because I couldn't afford a big place in a new building, because those prices seem not really to make sense. Always go old, I would say, in terms of buildings in Thailand. No, I wouldn't say that at all. I'd say don't buy. But anyway, this was perfect. Low rise, top floor, and everything just screamed at me. Perhaps you could buy it. It might need some work doing to it, and it could actually work for us. As I said, I had around 400 grand left after going completely insane, and this place was the equivalent of 200 grand. Not cheap, but I just had this newfound spark come back inside me. I told myself, you've been in property development all your life. You've done very well out of it. This place is perfect, a perfect layout. You could probably do a bit of renovation to it, and perhaps you could increase the value on it to get it for the right price. I'm there taking my Western mentality to the Thai property market because I had no idea about the Thai property market at the time. I just saw condos and people buying and selling them and thought I could make my mark, but I guess I just wasn't aware how it worked. We went away, promised we would think about it, promised we'd call the owner, and we decided to leave Bangkok in order to think about it, just to kind of get a different perspective, go to the beach for a few days, really think about it long and hard, and see if it's something we're going to do. And we did. We bought it. While it was being bought, I made one of those huge errors, because when it came time to go and transfer the condo to my name, because I was foreign, I could own it. I mean, before we even went to the land office, I quickly found out that this was Thai-owned, and we were buying from a Thai owner, yet the foreign quota in the building was already full. Or it wasn't full, it was like 48% or something, and if we bought this, it would have taken it over the 49%, and because of that, that meant I physically couldn't own it because of these foreign quota restrictions. I made the decision that we could just buy it in my wife's name instead. What a stupid thing to do that was, but we were in love, we were going to be together forever, so why not? And I bought it in her name, and we moved in. I really haggled with the owner. I spent weeks getting the best price possible, and I actually saw that there was some value in it in terms of a slight renovation. Let's try to flip it. And although it was perfect and I thought this could be a forever home, I got my old ways back. When I explained to my wife how I used to make money and how I want to maybe do this again, she got so excited. It was a kind of excitement, but perhaps it was also kind of like a, maybe now it's my time to get what I want, or I don't know. Because I thought she loved me, and I mean, I wouldn't have done what I did if she didn't, would I? No guy would have done what they did if they didn't think their girl loved them. Did she love me, or did she hate me? I don't know. But as of now, that's beside the point. While we were doing the renovation, we stayed in the same place that we had been living in, and it didn't take very long. We found a really great contractor, not a bad word to say about them, and once it was finished, it was perfect. And we moved in, celebrated, we were happy, and at this point, there's no issues whatsoever with my wife. And we'd been living there for a couple of weeks at this point, a couple of weeks only, and we'd already kind of listed it for sale with a couple of agents. And after all the taxes and everything, if we got the right price for it, we'd have only made a couple of 100,000 baht at the most on a condo, which was around 10 million baht. It wasn't a fortune to make, but it was still a couple of 100,000, and it excited me. It made me feel like I had a purpose again. If you're thinking about retiring in your early 50s and you've always been active and busy and you've always had things to do all the time, and then all of a sudden you don't have anything to do, I think that's quite a scary thing, because I was so bored of not having anything to do that this project sounded fun. So if we only made a couple of 100,000, then that's not a problem. But back to it. After those couple of weeks since moving in, my wife received a call from her family saying they had some kind of financial problem, like a really big financial problem. And her parents, this is who we're talking about here, her parents, who less than a year prior to this had received 1 million baht from me in Sinsod, more money than they'd ever seen in their lives, were now having severe financial issues. My wife refused to tell me exactly what was going on, saying we need to go and speak to the family first. Let's go and see what's happening. And I just thought, well, that's dreadful. I had no inclination whatsoever that I was going to be the one expected to step in and help. That was the furthest thing from my mind, given the fact that I'd already given them money and I didn't know what they'd done with it or anything. It was none of my business. I didn't care about that. But when we arrived at the family's house in Isan, Korat this was, where they were from, a very, very rural part of the province, we arrived in my car. One thing I didn't really like about Thailand was what I felt was a severe lack of choice when it came to cars that were reasonably priced. It was all the small engine, locally manufactured ones, and anything that I was used to driving, like the types of cars I used to have, like a 10-year-old Mercedes S63 kind of thing, I just couldn't afford that in Thailand. But anyway, we had a Honda City. Not the best car, but it did the job. We arrived, and I wondered if there was somebody else visiting too, because out front there was this 4-door Toyota pickup as well as 2 motorcycles. Her kids were living with her parents, that was just how it was in Thailand, and that was good for me. I suppose out of the money I was giving to my wife, she was using that to support her family, but again, that wasn't any of my business what she did with them. But anyway, before long I found out that out of that 1 million baht, they'd paid a down payment on a car, the one I saw outside, a 1.2 million baht car, but they only paid down on it, I think 25%. They bought a few motorcycles, they bought those for cash, and inside they had this big TV, a brand new fridge, a brand new everything basically. So what I found out was that they'd blown through all the money, but not only that, they had finance on a car that had payments to be made of 25,000 baht a month, and they had no ability to pay. And they were talking together, and I'm thinking this is bad. I hope they can sort something out. Just expecting them to turn around and sell it. They probably had enough equity in it, given the fact that the price of cars don't depreciate too much in Thailand. They probably had enough equity in it to not really have to pay anything extra on top. After about half an hour, I was getting quite bored, so I just jumped in the car and went to the local restaurant that I'd been to before when we were there last time. I thought I'd have a couple of beers and come back and hopefully they've sorted it out. But by the time I was halfway through my second beer, my wife asked, calling me to go back. She said we needed to talk. As soon as I got back, she just basically said it like she'd already determined that this was going to happen. And she said, because of all these problems, the only thing we can do is just pay for the car, and then it will be absolutely fine. I asked her what she meant by that, saying it would be most likely more sensible idea to sell it because it had about 800,000 baht left to pay, or just under. They'd made a few payments, but instead of saving money behind to pay for it in case of emergencies, they instead bought TVs and filled the house with stuff that perhaps they didn't really need. She told me that you're going to have to pay for this. This was just under 20 grand UK we're talking about at the time, and I just told her I can't do that. How am I going to do that? That was when I sort of found out, based on her reaction and her parents' reaction, that I was kind of pushed into a bit of a corner, given the fact that the condo we had belonged to my wife, given the fact that she seemed to be upset that I wasn't just about to step in and help, and I asked, why can't they sell it? Apparently, they needed the car. They sold their other one. They used to have an old pickup before, but they sold it for 200,000 baht, and I suppose that made it worse, because where's that money? Yes, they spent it. I was getting quite confused about things. I wasn't alarmed or necessarily concerned that I was going to lose all my money, or that there was any kind of plan to get money out of me. I thought it was just because of their own incompetence, and also because my wife, I thought she was clever, would see that this was a bad idea for us to lose that money. And although I still felt she was clever, it wasn't about that for her. It was about putting her family first. So I said I'll loan it to them, and then they can give me 5,000 baht every month back. And she said okay. I never saw any of that money ever again. That was the first kind of oh no moment. I'd married into a family who got more money than they'd ever seen in their life, and they'd spent it in no time whatsoever, and then they expected more. Both her parents were nearly 70 as well, spending like they were my wife's age, so at this point they'd had nearly double the sinsot amount out of me, and I just told them that's it, I don't have any more. But the thing is, my wife knew how much money I had, because I already told her. Another mistake, another ridiculous mistake, but I made it, and I will admit to it. We went back to Bangkok, and we've got our condo listed for sale at a really reasonable price. Again, hoping to make a couple of 100,000 baht. And then I'm thinking, well, if we make that, that's still not going to cover the money I've just spent. But that gave me even more reason to believe that this was the best thing to do, to just try to make bits of money, but it wasn't selling. Because I'd given money to the family, and because of the fact that we had this condo, my income had been reduced. Now, if we had spent what I had coming in, it would have been a small amount. We couldn't spend more than that, and if we did, my remaining money would still go down. But again, I'd been in property a long time. I knew what I was doing. So, it's sell. Eventually get some money back, let's do another, and let's just build a bit more security. We remained sensible for a while, until we were going back to visit the family again, just to visit. No talk of any problems, no talks of anything, just to visit. And the thing that I suppose really makes me feel sick about my own stupidity, about my own complete lack of understanding about what was going on, this time they didn't have a problem. This time they had a solution to never having a problem again. Because now they had this pickup that was paid for. It was a 4-door, so it wasn't ideal for carrying things around because the pickup bed wasn't as big as it would have needed to have been. But she told me that her father, her 70-year-old father, wanted to do this business and it would need a little bit of money to set up. She couldn't really explain to me exactly what it was. Something to do with taking fruit from where they were down to Bangkok and selling it. But they needed money for capital to be able to buy initial stock. And they also said, I don't know what it was, for some kind of machine thing. I still to this day don't know what it was, but that's what they needed the money for. Of course, they hadn't been paying me the 5,000 baht a month back like I was promised, and my wife somehow managed to convince me that they felt bad that they hadn't given me any money back. So if I give them more money, they will be able to actually pay me back. but this time they'll be able to give me $10,000 a month. It was like she was dangling a stick in front of me as if to say, I'm sorry, it didn't work before, but more money will make it work. Although I was really hesitant, I want you to understand that I wasn't just saying, yes, okay, I'll do that, I don't care, that's fine, I don't mind. That wasn't the case at all. I was really hesitant. I tried to push back. I said, what if this happens, and what if that happens, and my wife was just able to convince me that it wouldn't. Given the fact that when we were together, when we were in the room together, when we were out together, she was just everything like I wanted a wife to be. She never nagged at me, never complained, and wasn't willing to play the part of a wife or anything like that. She never did that, and it was like she had her hooks already dug into me so deep that I was powerless to stop things when it came to her asking for something, because I had so much invested already, and the thought of her changing because I wasn't able to do what she wanted really scared me. She managed to convince me to invest $500,000 into this thing for her parents. I just gave her the cash. I didn't even say I'll happily go and buy the machine for you and make sure everything's right. I gave her the cash, as stupid as that was. At the time, I wasn't seeing it for what it was. I wasn't seeing that I was being bled dry and my wife using her family as an excuse to get money. I didn't see anything like that. Perhaps even my wife took a little bit of money off the top for herself, because when we're speaking, she's acting as translator. Her parents don't speak one word of English, and I didn't speak one word of Thai, so they could have been saying absolutely anything, and she could have said something at the end, and perhaps it was a ruse all along. Although the pickup was there, and the pickup blue book by the time we got back was there, so that was true, but this business, whether that was true or not, I don't even know. Perhaps they were just having a regular conversation, and this is one of the things that scares me the most. Perhaps when we were there, they were talking about the rice harvest and the rain season or something, and she told me they were talking about this business and how they were going to give me some money. She could have done anything and made up anything, I will never know, but I gave her $500,000. Now I'm getting quite concerned because the condo isn't selling and I need to release some capital out of that in order to get back on a more stable financial footing. Given the fact I'd given so much money away, and I still don't understand why I did, I was really getting quite concerned, and I don't understand how stupid I was, and I probably sound stupid as I'm telling you this, but it's crazy what people do in Thailand. It's as though common sense doesn't make sense for some people, and it's as though something you wouldn't even do at home is something that you would do in Thailand. It just doesn't make sense. But the place isn't selling. But then I made the most stupid decision of all, the most stupid decision, because at this point I still considered myself to be a professional property developer. I was all my life, so how could I not know what I was going to do? In the same building as the one we had a condo, and we had a few people looking at it, it wasn't like there was no interest. A smaller unit came up for sale, and it just looked like it was the bargain of a lifetime. They wanted to sell it quickly, and there were no takers currently, and I thought we could push the price down a lot, do a small renovation on it, and perhaps we could make $500,000. That's what I was thinking. Let's make some money back. Okay, it might temporarily put me in a very precarious financial position, but it's not like we didn't have anything. We had the assets. So I bought this condo, and I had about $1 million left after the renovation, plus my visa money of $800,000, knowing I could change to a marriage visa and use $400,000 instead if things didn't sell quickly. But of course it didn't sell, and this actually drags on for a few years, and my wife and I are getting worse together as the time goes by. I think is the best way to put it, and my money's going down, and I changed to a marriage visa, and it's still going down, and eventually we get an offer on the smaller condo, and I felt a huge sense of relief come over me because it would have made us some profit. But things got worse yet again from there, and I don't know how this happened, because when we bought it, again, it went into my wife's name because of the foreign quota restrictions. I had to sign a lot of documents. I had to sign that I was her husband, I had to be there when it was transferred, I had to be present because we were husband and wife. But when it came time to sell, she told me she had something to tell me. She'd taken out a mortgage on it for about half the value, and how could she do that? I don't know, because surely I should have had to have gone to the land office with her to sign papers. I don't know how she did it, but anyway, she'd managed. Apparently, the business that the family was doing, and again, I hadn't seen any money out of this, wasn't doing as well as it should have been, and it needed some more investment. So she took it out of the condo, and it's still not going so well, but she's trying her best kind of thing. At this point, I think that was when I finally understood that I'd been played throughout the whole of it. I had been played. Because okay, I got half the money out of the condo, and she did put that into my bank as promised, I just had to tell myself, now it's not a question of you and your wife anymore. Now it's a question of, okay, get what you can and get out of there, because this is going to end badly. It's going to end badly if you're not careful. But I had, at the same time, to be okay with my wife, so that she wouldn't understand that perhaps I had intentions to leave. And this goes on for a long time. I want you to imagine I'm with my wife, we've got enough money to see us for the time being, and we're still going places together, we're still kind of okay together, still sleeping in the same bed, she's still being my wife, everything's kind of okay there. But I'm just waiting for someone to come and buy this other condo, because as soon as we get that sold, I'm going to take the money and leave. That was what my plan was. And it did sell, eventually. Again, probably over a year of this going on before it did. It wasn't quick, it was drawn out, probably a whole year. But we didn't make any money on it. I ended up losing just over $1 million on it, $1 million baht, and the money lands in her bank, but she won't transfer it to me. She said we need to buy another house, let's get a smaller one. She said that if she transfers the money to me, then it might be a problem when it comes to buying another house, and all this nonsense that she's coming up with. Clearly, she's lying and fabricating things, but I can't say to her, no way, transfer the money to me in an angry way, because perhaps then it might make her understand what my intentions really were. It was very precarious. How can I get that money into my bank? I couldn't. I could potentially go and find a lawyer, try and file for divorce and get half, but I wanted all of it. And it was because I wanted all of it that I ultimately ended up losing everything, as hard and painful as that is to admit. What happened from there was more investments in the family, and again, this is across a long time, by the way, years, and I'm just constantly living, trying to find an exit. But as time goes by, the exit is getting smaller and smaller, and the money is going down and down. She's doing business with her family, supposedly, and on the surface, things are going okay, according to her, but why am I not seeing any money? Occasionally, she would say that they've had a good month, here's 10,000 baht, and it's like, you've had millions more than that out of me, and 10,000 baht, what's that? So it got to the point where half of everything wouldn't have even been worth it. We're talking maybe 2018 at this point, maybe a little bit longer, a long drawn-out process, and we had bought another place, and again, I'm just going along with it. You're probably going to think I'm an idiot, and I am, a huge idiot. And I think perhaps if I think about it properly, I had resigned myself to the fact that, okay, I'm not going to get any money back, so let's just live with my wife and just be okay. And that's what I was doing, until we had no money left whatsoever. I found myself with absolutely no control of any of the money that I had. Everything was with her. She was paying for everything when we went out. She was doing everything. It's like she'd taken control of my life and my finances, and I'd allowed it to happen. Although we had the place where we were living, which belonged to her, only a small place, but it was a landed house, there was no cash. And again, I didn't expect that to happen, because she was always saying that she would be in charge of things. But when she said there's been some problems with the business in the village, there's been some big problems with it, and we don't have any money left, and she asked for some more. When I told her you've already had absolutely everything out of me, it was like a light bulb had just been turned off almost immediately. It was like she wasn't trying to hide it anymore. It was so obvious. It was sickening, so awful to understand and witness that I'd just been a necessary person in the way of her grand visions. Perhaps the money was gone, or perhaps it had been siphoned and put somewhere else for safekeeping. I don't know. But when I said, let's sell the house, and she said it might take a long time, we don't have any money, that was the heart-stopping moment when I finally came to terms with the fact that I'd somehow blown through £500,000 doing the most ridiculous and insane things anyone's ever done. And when I'd really told her that I don't have any more, and by the way, in this point she's already in her 50s, she said, if you don't have any more money, I will go back to work in the bar. And I couldn't believe it when she said that. I just couldn't believe it, but that's what she said. I'd basically been the money source of an entire rural Isan family, and when it was clear that there was no money coming more from me, it was clear it was over, and I was powerless to fight it, and we got divorced. She kept the house. I could have fought it and maybe got half of it, but again, I had no money to fight it. When I had to call my son and tell him I'd lost £500,000 in Thailand to a bar girl, I told him the truth. I'd never kept secrets from my son. He just started laughing, saying, come on, Dad, I'm not that stupid to fall for that. But when he finally understood I was telling the truth, he said he was on his way. True to his word, he arrived a few days later, got his whole family with him. By this point, he's doing really well financially for himself in property, and he takes me with his family to a nice beach resort. My first time meeting my grandkids, first time meeting his wife, and I tell him about everything. And he just said, well, Dad, I've got you, don't worry about it. Come back, you can live in one of the houses for as long as you need, and I'll help you get back on your feet. And he did. I got back into property development again, thanks to my son, and I was just very good at it. I should point out that I did all the work myself, by the way. I was an electrician, and I could do the plumbing, I could do everything, so I didn't need to pay people to do the work for me. So I guess that helps. Buy a house for 70 grand at the time, maybe put 20 grand into it and sell it for 140 grand kind of thing. So I did get back on my feet thanks to my son, and I'm still back on my feet today. And I just don't understand how in Thailand I became someone different. I don't understand how I became an idiot. I don't understand how I did things that I would never have done under any circumstances at home. I wouldn't have gone into something like that at home. I wouldn't have walked into a strip club at home and met a girl and thought, wow, she's perfect. She can beat me at Connect 4. She must be clever. I would never have done that. Even when I was with my ex-wife, my English ex, I would never have bought something in her name solely, regardless of anything. It would have been in joint names. But in Thailand, I just took complete leave of my senses, and I lost £500,000. And if it wasn't for my son, I'd still be destitute today.
Thanks for tuning into today's story, guys. I really do appreciate it. If you're interested in exclusive content from both Thailand and the Philippines, that is, exclusive stories, then the link to that is in the description. We've got a number of exclusives up there at the moment, and there are going to be more coming soon. Anyway, really appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch you in the next story. Cheers, guys.